Hey everyone, welcome to the Blue Gum Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about choosing insurance for your first home. We're going to be talking about the variety, the different kinds of insurance, the variety, the ins and outs, setting it up, getting yourself ready to apply for a policy. It's a process. All right, so keep in mind, this is not financial advice. Speak to a professional in your jurisdiction and we'll be all good. Now, looking forward, there are several things that you need to take into account when you're applying for an insurance policy. Now, you want something that fits within your budget, but you also want something that doesn't exclude you from the worst thing happening, okay? You don't want to move into a house, have it rain and flood, and then all of a sudden you're out of a house because flooding isn't in your policy and then you've just lost your life savings. It'll be a terrible situation. This is why before choosing your policy, you should always take the time to read and compare the product disclosure statement. Now, you could be looking at 3 different insurers, 3 different products, but the reality is there's probably 12 different products between the 3 insurers. There could be 50 products. You don't know. That's why you have to read and scrutinize these PDS, these product disclosure statements. When you apply for an insurance policy, the policy itself, yes, that's the contract, but the product disclosure statement, that's also the contract. So you have to read these things, right? There are so many stories about people complaining about the terrible insurance companies doing this, that, and the other. But the reality is that if these people read the product disclosure statement, they wouldn't be in this mess, right? And you really have to scrutinize these documents, and you really have to ring up and ask what they mean by the things that they're saying in the PDS before you choose something, okay? Now, the first step, you're buying your house, you're moving your house, you're choosing your policy for the first time. You've got to make an inventory of everything you own. Your furniture, your appliances, including the TV, microwave, and kettle, your jewelry, your laptop, all the stuff in your house, it needs to be put into a spreadsheet, right? And you need to make sure that on the date that you catalog it, you record the date of which you put these things into the spreadsheet. It's very important, right? You need to take photos and videos of the stuff that you own. You want proof of ownership to make sure that if anything goes wrong, you're not out of pocket for it, okay? Think of it this way, right? If you promise me, right, that you're going to cover me if something breaks, and I call you up and say, hey, my TV is broken, and then you say, prove it. Okay, fine, I'll send you a photo of my broken TV. And then you say, no, prove to me that you paid for it. Well, I'm going to be taken aback because obviously I don't have proof that I paid for it. I've had this TV for 2 years. And they say, well, if you don't have proof of it, how do we know it wasn't lent to you by someone? And there's going to be it's plausible deniability. It's the fact that they count on human error to profit off human error. And yeah, it's a cruddy thing, but what you've got to understand is, it's a business and they don't have to insure you, but they choose to because they want to make money on the odds that you don't back yourself up. That's just the business, okay? So you've got to make sure that you toe the line, because you can't expect them to toe the line when you haven't done so either. If you've got a kitchen upgrade, you need to catalog it. If the builder upgraded you from a 4 gas burner to an 8 gas burner because you're best mates, you got to catalog that. You have to catalog it. If the things that aren't standard in your building contract, you have to catalog it. Everything has to be cataloged, because if you sign a standard contract, right, and you get all the amenities installed in your kitchen and you haven't catalogued it, chances are the builder hasn't catalogued it either, because they're way too busy to keep track of this stuff. And even if they did, you can't rely on them to supply the information because maybe they're busy, right? So there's all these things that you need to account for, take personal responsibility for when you're applying for a home policy. You want to make sure that all this stuff is covered, right? Once you've catalogued these items, you're going to need to find out what you paid for them. It can be an estimate. You can go online and you can calculate how much you paid for something. As long as you had a photo or a video of something before you bought it, they're more or less going to accept that as proof. So you may not need to find receipts for everything, but it's preferable if you do have some kind of receipt for everything. This is why online shopping is great. You get those receipts sent to your email, or you can always call up Kogan or whoever it is that sold you the TV or vacuum cleaner to get a copy of the receipt. Now, you're going to need to compare the item from how much you paid for it 2 years ago or yesterday to what you paid for it today. So if the market price for it today is 60% less, then you're going to have to factor that in your spreadsheet. Because remember, right, if you are intentionally misleading, they can outright refuse your claim. They reserve that right, okay? Now, what we've just done here is we've just created your contents. Now, your contents is 2/3 of your home policy, and you want to make sure that if anything happens, you're covered. So your contents is literally 2/3 of the policy, right? Make sure you go through your PDS and you scrutinize it, because most policies will only cover a nominal amount of contents. If you have more contents that needs to be covered, then you will need to upgrade your policy or go to a new policy. The second major point is most insurance policies have minimum cover for theft, burglary, fire, and flood. Some of them cover one, some of them cover two, some of them cover all. That's called a comprehensive policy, because you're comprehensively covered for anything foreseeable. Okay? You don't be concerned about fire, don't be concerned about burglary. Be concerned about flood, because it rains every second week, and flooding from rain can cause more damage than a fire. It can be more catastrophic than a fire, because it can get moldy and it can get dirty, and that your house could literally fall over from flood damage. It happens. A home could be condemned due to mold, right? And you'll need to hire these specialty removal people to clean up the moldy debris and remove all your stuff from the site, just so that you can rebuild at your own cost. Imagine the expense. Deconstructing your dream home only to build up something cheaper because you couldn't afford to rebuild the same thing because you weren't covered. So make sure, if you can afford it, the extra $1,000 or a few $1,000 it will cost you, make sure you can afford to get the comprehensive, right? Because you've got nothing to lose. If you've done the due diligence yourself and you've accounted for all of your contents in a spreadsheet and you've saved it somewhere secure, right? You'll be fine. Because what you've just done there is you've self-insured. You have self-insured against the loss of your records, right? You have done your best to secure all the information that you can to protect yourself and back yourself up. And the insurers will appreciate that. Now, yeah, okay, the best coverage, it's the most costly, yada yada, but it's comprehensive, okay? It's going to protect you from anything that comes your way. If it's your first home, just bear it. Suck it up and bear it, because you don't want flooding, fire, burglary. You don't want something to go wrong in your house, in your first home. Okay? Look, the Australian culture, our entire lives, we've been told the first home is the most important, and it is. People hate selling their first homes. It's where they live for 10, 15 years. Okay? If you want the house to be a home, you need to get the comprehensive insurance policy. Look, the peace of mind is worth the cost. All right, it's honestly worth the cost. All right, everyone, that's it for choosing insurance for your first home podcast today. That's the Blue Gum Podcast. Make sure you tune in again and get a gist of what we're all about. So we talk about real estate, personal finance, and startups. If you're interested, you should definitely tune in again. We go through a lot of different ideas. As I always say, it's better to learn 10 punches 1,000 different times, than to learn one punch 1,000 times and risk having imperfect form. You want perfect form. So if you learn something from different perspectives, or you learn something that you already know from a different perspective, then you've already gained something valuable. Now, thanks for tuning in, and I wish you all the best, and I'll hopefully hear from you next time. Bye-bye.